Keith McCullough has many titles on his resume: CEO of Hedgeye Risk Management, former hedge fund manager, and Bloomberg contributing editor. Now you can add author to the list. Keith's book, Diary of a Hedge Fund Manager, From the Top to the Bottom and Back Again, hit bookstores earlier this week. I'm the proud owner of a signed copy, although I have to wrangle it out later. Keith, thanks for joining us. So tell us a little bit about the process of writing this book. I mean, you wanted to unveil your experience, is that right, about being a hedge fund manager?
Yeah, because it was really about transparency, and I actually was in the...
It's a big theme these days.
Yeah, I was in the unenviable position of trying to call the market every day from November of 2007 until today, and I actually wrote a daily note. So that's kind of the construct of the book, is it follows, you know, the ups and downs of trying to be that guy.
And you said, in some ways, when you left the hedge fund industry, you sort of missed that process, right? So you began keeping a paper book, so to speak.
Right. You know, when you're in the game, you miss, keeping score.
Yeah, we're all like dogs, Keith. It's okay. We're just trained. We're trained to do what we do.
Yeah, so it was my own method of being accountable to myself. So I want to keep score. I wanted to be in the game. That's exactly the way that I express my thoughts.
So talk to us then about, I mean, you had that prescient call. I mean, you saw the crisis coming, so to speak. Maybe you weren't the first voice out there, but you were among those who did issue this cautionary warning, and it seems like you were shown the door for it.
Well, and to some extent, I don't think it was that complicated of a call to make if you were allowed to make the call. So to some extent, Deirdre, being your own employer and your own boss lets you make the call, and that's what I felt like I did. And to some extent, my traverse of the hedge fund industry in the last decade is a metaphor for how crazy it got.
So talk to us about just how crazy I got. I mean, what's the craziest moment?
I mean, the craziest for me, at least, was when somebody offered to buy my hedge fund. I thought that was absolutely ludicrous. So, I mean, I don't think you could sell a hedge fund today for a multiple, or that, that kind of event-driven...
Meaning it was so frothy that you couldn't even believe how your own work, even though I'm sure you were proud of it, was being valued.
Right. At the end of the day, I mean, there was a ton of capacity in the hedge fund industry in 2006, 2007, and every day, if you just couldn't look in the mirror, you missed it. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it was pretty straightforward that we were in a hedge fund bubble.
All right, now, Keith, we know there's been a lot of books written about Wall Street. We are sure yours is the best, but what makes yours different?
I guess I'm in it. I mean, that might be the only...
There we go. Sold. All right. No, but I mean, what about the approach? Is it the fact that you kept this daily log? Is it the fact that it sort of is a TikTok? Does that make it different than perhaps some of the other ones that you've written or read? Yeah,
I mean, it's based on verbatim, a notebook that I've kept. And to the extent that that is a daily peek into what was happening in the last 10 years, I think it's absolutely unique.
Now, can you shed some light on the process? I mean, how hard is it to write a book while, oh, yeah, you have a day job?
Well, that's actually Rich Blake, who is a co-author of the book. He actually did all the horse work, if you will. I think he did a fantastic job. He made my life really easy. So, the daily process associated with that, I'd have to give all the credit to Rich.
Now, you've launched an institutional, obviously, the Hedgeye, which is an exclusive specialist research fund. How is this kind of progressing, I should say?
It's progressing beyond my wildest dreams. I didn't really have any dreams other than writing this daily note in my boxers in 2007. So now we have 35 employees, we have hundreds of clients, and it's it's a blessing to have this opportunity.
Let's talk about one of your calls that is breaking from the pack right now as part of Hedgeye, and that is a somewhat muted call for growth from China, because there's a lot of big voices out there, and of course we're following the story even more closely these days with what is going on with Google. You say that China is going to slow down in 2010, and maybe investors should reconsider some of their frothier bets, if they have them, on growth in that country.
Yes, and just to take a step back, we were bullish on China all of last year. We're still actually bullish on China for the long term, but we do think that the government themselves are going to impose a slowdown in the first 3 to 6 months of the year. If you actually look at it, China's already down over 2% year to date on the Chinese Shanghai Composite Exchange. So it's underperforming a lot of other emerging markets, and I think that that growth mechanism, if you will, on the speculative side of growth is going to slow, and the Chinese are focused on getting that back to quality growth.
But you're still bullish on the Chinese currency. You're still bullish on the yuan.
Right. Now, to some extent, their cooling things down is going to be a function of them raising interest rates and letting the currency float. Don't forget that the Chinese currency has not appreciated at all for the last 18 months, and prior to that, it had been up 21% in 3 years. So we're just going to go back to what the Chinese are doing, tightening a little bit, going back to the game of focusing on quality growth.
So you're saying quality growth versus speculative growth in China. The yuan is still a good bet. Yesterday, we saw the People's Bank of China raise reserve requirements, raise capital requirements, and that really was felt in Asia. I mean, we saw a huge sell-off overnight. Right. What do you make of that move? Is that the government's admission that even they realize things have gotten a little bit too speculative?
Yeah, absolutely. And they're actually they're doing what they said they're going to do, which I think is actually a very good position to be in politically. And if you look at it, they've raised rates twice in the last 2 weeks. They've raised reserve requirements on the banks to much higher levels than what Blankfein and Jamie Dimon were talking about yesterday here. And you've really seen, and you saw a 3% down move in the stock market. So they're going to take a little bit of pain for the long-term game, so to speak. But you also saw fall through again today. Hong Kong stocks could not rally from from that down day. So bearishness is starting to invade the market a bit.
Keith, we thank you very much. Congratulations on your book. Keith McCullough there, the CEO of Hedgeye Risk Management.